There's a moment, just as the sun dips below the horizon, when the world holds its breath, when the last golden light kisses the waves, and the first stars begin to whisper their ancient stories. Picture yourself there, standing at the prow of a ship, the salt-kissed wind tangling your hair, the vast expanse of the sea stretching endlessly before you. That's where we find Erendil the mariner, a figure of legend and longing, his gaze fixed on the distant edge of the world. His ship, Vingilot, glides through the twilight, a silver silhouette against the deepening blue, carrying not just a weary traveler, but the hopes of an entire world. Can you feel it? The weight of his quest, the quiet urgency in his heart. Middle-earth's fate balances on his shoulders, and every wave that breaks against the hull echoes with both promise and peril. Wherever you are right now, whether curled up in bed, listening as the night settles around you, or drifting into dreams under a sky full of stars, we'd love to know, what time is it where you are? Let us know in the comments below, and tell us where your journey into rest begins tonight, because stories like this are meant to be shared, to weave us together across distances, just as the threads of Eärendil's tale bind the heavens and the earth. This is no ordinary voyage. Eärendil sails not for glory or treasure, but for something far greater, a plea for salvation. His beloved Elwing, the love that anchors his soul, waits with the last light of their people flickering in her hands. And behind him, the shadow of Morgoth grows, a darkness that threatens to swallow all that is fair and free. But here, in this fragile hour between day and night, there's a whisper of hope, a chance that one mariner's courage might tip the scales of destiny. So let's set sail together into the heart of this timeless tale, where the sea sings secrets and the stars themselves lean close to listen. The story of Eärendil is about more than a journey across waters. It's about the light we carry, even when the world feels impossibly dark. Are you ready to follow that light? The deck of Vingilot creaks beneath their feet as Arundil stands before his crew, the weight of the Silmaril's glow casting long shadows across their faces. The air is thick with salt and uncertainty, the kind that settles deep in the bones before a storm. He meets their eyes, elves with centuries of wisdom etched into their features, men whose lives are fleeting but fierce with purpose, and speaks not as a lord, but as one who shares their fear. Darkness doesn't just swallow land, he says, his voice cutting through the wind. It swallows memory, the stories of our homes, the laughter in the halls of our fathers Morgoth would reduce them all to silence. A murmur ripples through the crew, some nodding, others gripping the rails tighter. Then comes the hard truth. No ship has ever passed the Enchanted Isles, Eärendil admits, and for a heartbeat, the only sound is the groan of the hull against the waves. The waters there are woven with spells meant to turn wanderers astray, to drown hope in mist and endless circling. He doesn't soften the danger. They deserve that honesty. But when he raises the Silmaril, its light spills over them like liquid starlight, and something shifts. Yet this, he says, is no ordinary light. It carries the last mercy of the Valor, the last defiance of our people. And if we falter now, who will speak for Middle-earth when the night grows too deep to breach? One of the men, a broad-shouldered sailor with storm-gray eyes, steps forward. I've no love for shadows, he grunts, but I've less for standing idle while they creep toward my children's beds. A chuckle, tense but real, passes among them. An elf with silver braids touches the prow, whispering an old blessing to the sea. Slowly, shoulders straighten. Hands find sword hilts, ropes, oars, whatever they need to steady themselves. They are still afraid, but fear, Eärendil knows, is not the opposite of courage. It is its companion. As the last light of day fades, Vingilot's sails catch the wind, carrying them toward the horizon where sky and sea bleed together. The crew doesn't cheer. There's no grand speech left to give, only the quiet understanding that some journeys begin with a single step, and others with a single breath, held tight in the chest before the plunge. The wind hums through the sails of Vingilot like a song half remembered, the kind that lingers at the edge of dreams. Crimson and gold streak the sky, not just as colors, but as living things, fire and promise, woven together by the hands of twilight. Eärendil's fingers tighten around the helm, the wood smooth and familiar under his grip, yet the sea ahead is anything but. It bucks and swirls, as though the very waters resist their passing. Behind them, the last faint outline of Middle-earth dissolves into the horizon, not with a sigh, but with the quiet finality of a door closing. Beneath the ship's silver prow, the waves split like a curtain drawn aside, but there's no triumph in it. The sea here is watchful. Shadows dart just beyond the reach of the Silmaril's glow. Shapes too large, too swift to be fish, their scales catching the light for only a heartbeat before vanishing into the abyss. A young elf at the railing stiffens, his knuckles white where he grips the wood. The old tales spoke of things that listen in the deep, he murmurs. Things that remember the names of every ship they've claimed. Eärendil doesn't dismiss the fear. He's heard those tales too, whispers of drowned spirits, of currents that coil like serpents around unwary hulls. But when he lifts the Silmaril higher, its light doesn't just push back the dark, it reveals something unexpected. The water beneath them isn't empty. Pale, luminous tendrils drift like submerged banners, glowing creatures spiraling upward in fleeting curiosity before retreating. It's beautiful. It's a warning. The sea is alive, and it's weighing them. Then the wind changes, not in the way of ordinary storms, but as if the air itself has drawn breath. It carries a melody, no, the ghost of one, notes strung together like pearls on a broken thread. Some of the crew sway toward it, their eyes distant. One man reaches for the rigging as if to adjust their course, his movements dreamlike. Eärendil's voice cracks like a whip. That song isn't for us. The crew jerks awake, blinking as though surfacing from deep water. The melody fades, but the taste of it lingers, honey sweet and salt sharp, a siren's call wrapped in a lullaby. The Silmaril pulses in Eärendil's hand, warm as a living heart. He knows what the crew doesn't say aloud. They're already in the Enchanted Isle's grasp. The sea here doesn't drown ships. It unravels them, strand by strand, until sailors forget why they ever left shore. But the light in his palm is a defiance, a fragment of the undying West itself. It doesn't just guide. It reminds of Elwing's hands cradling it like a promise, of the child waiting in the quiet of their halls, too young to understand why his father sails into the unknown. Vingilot presses onward, the stars above wheeling like silent witnesses. The crew keeps their hands busy, their voices low, but their eyes stray often to the Silmaril. Not in greed, in gratitude, because in a world where shadows speak and the sea sings lies, Light isn't just a tool, it's a covenant, and Erendil, standing tall at the helm, wears that truth like armor. The wind may murmur of doom, the waves may whisper of turn back, but the light says forward. The days stretch long and thin, the sun and moon trading places in a weary dance as Vingilot cuts through waters no map has ever recorded. The air grows heavy, thick with the scent of salt, and something older, something that lingers at the back of the throat, like the aftertaste of a forgotten dream. Then, on a night when even the waves seem to hold their breath, the mist comes. It doesn't creep, it rises all at once. A wall of silver gray swallowing the stars, the horizon, even the sound of the sea. The crew clusters closer, their voices hushed. This isn't the mist of storms or seasons. This mist has intention, and then they see it, the ship. A phantom vessel gliding soundless through the fog, its sails hanging in shreds, its hull bleached bone white by time or something worse. Shadowy figures crowd its deck, their forms shifting like smoke, their arms outstretched in silent invitation. One gestures toward an empty space at the railing, as if offering a place among them. The crew of Vingilot freezes. Even the bravest among them feel it, the pull, the whisper at the edge of thought that says, "Come closer, just a little closer." Erendil's voice cuts through the spell like a blade. Do not look at them. His hand grips the Silmaril so tightly, the light spills between his fingers, casting jagged shadows across his face. They are not lost souls. They are the sea's teeth, set to catch the unwary. But warnings are brittle things against the weight of curiosity. A young sailor, his eyes wide with something between wonder and dread, takes a step forward. His name is lost to the mist before his boot even touches the rail. One moment he's there, fingers brushing the fog, the next, gone, not a splash, not a cry. Just silence. The crew recoils, their breath coming fast and shallow. The spectral ship drifts nearer, its tattered sails now close enough to touch. The shadow figures lean in, their hollow faces almost pleading. It's the silence that chills the most. No laughter, no whispers, just the terrible, yawning quiet of a door left ajar. Eärendil doesn't hesitate. He raises the Silmaril high, its light exploding outward in a burst of radiance, so fierce it scorches the mist away. The phantom ship shudders, its planks cracking like dry bones, before dissolving into tendrils of smoke that sink beneath the waves. The fog lifts, the stars return. But the deck of Vingilot feels smaller now, the air heavier. The crew avoids the spot where their companions stood, as if the boards themselves might remember and reach up to claim another. Eärendil doesn't offer empty comfort. He meets their grief with the only truth he has. The sea doesn't punish fools. It doesn't reward the wise. It simply is. And we are the ones who must choose to turn back or to press on, knowing the cost. The Silmaril's glow settles over them like a mantle, its light no longer just a guide, but a reminder. Every league they travel is bought with something precious. Ahead, the water stretches black and endless. Behind them, the wake vanishes as if they were never there at all. The sea doesn't roar, it screams. Waves taller than the highest towers of Gondolin rise around Vingilot, their crests foaming like the jaws of ravenous beasts. The ship bucks like a living thing, timbers groaning under the assault, and for the first time, even the steadfast elves among the crew falter. This is no natural storm. The water doesn't just churn, it watches. Every surge feels deliberate, every gust of wind carrying a voice too deep for mortal ears. High above, lightning forks across the sky, not in random strikes, but in patterns ancient, deliberate, like runes carved by a god's hand. Erendil doesn't wait. He's halfway up the mast before the crew can shout warnings, the rope burning his palms as the ship lurches beneath him. Salt spray stings his eyes, but he doesn't blink. At the top, the world is chaos horizonless, airless, a maelstrom of black water and howling wind. He raises the Silmaril, not as a beacon, but as a challenge. Ulmo, his voice is raw, ripped away by the gale, yet the name hangs in the air like a struck bell. Lord of waters, if you test us, then see us, the storm answers. A wave like a moving mountain crashes down, and for a heartbeat, Vingilot vanishes beneath the weight of the sea. The crew clings to whatever they can, lungs burning, eyes wide in the green-black dark. Then light. The Silmaril blazes through the water, its radiance pushing back the tide until the ship surges upward, gasping into the air once more. The light doesn't just illuminate, it defies. Shadows shrink from it, the very waves flinching as if scalded. And then, the impossible. The storm stills, not fades, not weakens parts. The clouds tear open like a curtain ripped aside, revealing a narrow path of water, so calm it gleams like polished glass. The crew staggers to their feet, their cheers trembling with disbelief. But Eärendil doesn't move. He knows this road of calm, leading west, isn't mercy. It's a threshold. The storm wasn't trying to destroy them. It was asking, are you worthy of what lies beyond? Below deck, the youngest sailor, the one who still leaves offerings to the sea each dawn, whispers, we should turn back. No one rebukes him. The silence is heavier than the storm's fury, because they all feel it now, the weight of the unseen gaze upon them. This isn't just a journey across water. It's a crossing into realms meant for older, greater beings, and the light of the Silmaril, for all its power, feels suddenly small in the face of what awaits. Erendil closes his fingers around the jewel, its warmth seeping into his bones. He doesn't speak of courage, doesn't remind them of Elwing, of Middle-earth's fading hope. He simply turns the helm toward the waiting path. The crew follows, not with cheers now, but with quiet resolve. The storm was only the first question. The sea, the sky, the very air, they all whisper the next. What will you pay to reach the shore? The jagged spires of the Enchanted Isles rise from the sea like broken teeth, their blackened peaks glistening with salt and something darker, the residue of spells older than the first ships. The waters here don't flow, they coil, twisting around the rocks in patterns that make no sense, as if the sea itself has forgotten the laws of tide and time. Vingilot's prow hesitates for the first time since leaving harbor, the wood shuddering as unseen currents tug it toward the labyrinth. The crew's breath comes slow, their eyelids fluttering. It's not exhaustion, it's the air, thick with the scent of crushed poppies and honey, sweet enough to make the bones ache with longing for rest. Eärendil feels it too. The weight presses down like a hand on his chest, gentle but insistent, murmuring, close your eyes, just for a moment. His fingers tremble around the Silmaril, its light flickering as if fighting through fog. Then he does the one thing the Isles don't expect. He laughs, not in defiance, but in recognition. Oh, this is your trick. His voice is rough, too loud in the hush. to sing us to sleep like fretful children. The crew stirs at the sound, their heads lifting as if surfacing from deep water. He doesn't wait for the enchantment to tighten its grip. Raising the Silmaril high, he begins to sing. Not a spell, not an incantation, but a hymn so old the very rocks might remember it. The melody is simple, the words fewer still, but they carry the weight of countless voices who have sung them before, in brighter days under kinder skies. At first, only the wind answers, then, one by one, the crew joins. An elf's voice, clear as a bell, a man's rough but unwavering. Even the youngest sailor, his throat tight with fear, finds the notes like stepping stones in the dark. The song doesn't shatter the enchantment. It braids around it, threads of light and breath, weaving a net too delicate for the isles to notice, yet strong enough to hold them fast. The drowsiness doesn't vanish, it simply matters less. The rocks loom closer, their edges sharp enough to gut a ship, but Vingilot slips between them like a needle through cloth. The crew's voices never waver, even as the air thickens, as if the isles press down in frustration. Then comes the true test. The passage narrows to a slit, barely wider than the ship's beam. The current quickens, pulling them toward a whirlpool, where the bones of other vessels glint like pearls in the abyss. The song falters. Eärendil doesn't shout, doesn't command. He simply turns his face toward the light in his hand and sings louder, the notes ringing off the stone walls as if the rocks themselves might join the chorus. And something answers, not the isles, not the sea, the ship. Vingilot's timbers hum in resonance, the silver prow gleaming as if remembering the hands that shaped it in a time before shadows. The whirlpool's grasp loosens, the current relents, just enough. The ship slides through, the crew's voices rising in a final, triumphant note as they burst into open water beyond. Silence falls, not the drowsy, honeyed quiet of before, but the hush of a held breath. The enchanted isles recede behind them, their spells unbroken but cheated, for now. The crew slumps where they stand, their throats raw, their hands shaking. No one speaks of what almost happened. They don't need to. The light of the Silmaril, steady in Eärendil's grip, says it for them. Some victories aren't won by blade or strength, but by the stubborn, singing refusal to close your eyes. The wind dies to a murmur as Vingilot glides through waters so still they might be glass. No waves break the surface, only the occasional ripple, as if something vast moves just beneath. Then the voices begin, not from the air, not from the sea, but from the silence itself. At first, they're barely there, whispers curled around the creak of the rigging, sighs woven into the rustle of sails. Erendil stiffens. These aren't the taunts of storms or the songs of sirens. These voices know his name. Turn back, son of Chuar. The words brush against his ear like cold fingers, and suddenly the deck is crowded with phantoms, figures half seen, their faces blurred as if viewed through rain-streaked glass. Some wear armor blackened by ancient fires. Others clutch broken swords, their wounds still fresh, though the battles that claimed them faded to dust long ago. They don't threaten, they simply stand, their presence heavy with the weight of 1,000 unanswered questions. No ship returns from the west, murmurs one, her voice cracked with salt and time. No plea reaches the Valor's ears. We tried, look what it cost us. Eärendil's hand tightens around the Silmaril, but its light doesn't scatter these shadows. They cling like smoke, their whispers slipping between his ribs. Your son will never know your face, hisses a man with eyes like tarnished silver. Your wife will weep over empty shores. Is this how the great Erendil wishes to be remembered? As a fool who chased hope into the dark? Then, softer than all the rest, comes Elwing's voice. Not from the ghosts, but from the light itself. Remember, she murmurs, and suddenly he's not on the ship at all. He's in the quiet of their chambers before dawn, watching her trace the curve of their sleeping child's cheek. He's in the gardens of Sirion, where she pressed the Silmaril into his hands, her touch lingering as if she already knew it might be their last. Remember why you sail. The vision shatters, the ghosts waver, their forms thinning as the Silmaril's glow swells not in brightness, but in warmth. It pulses like a heartbeat against Eärendil's palm, and for the first time, the voices falter. Not in fear, in something like recognition. One specter, an elf with hair like spun moonlight, reaches toward the light. His fingers don't pass through it. They catch for just an instant, before dissolving into motes of gold. Ah, he sighs, and the sound is almost happy. You carry more than a jewel, don't you? The crew watches, their breaths held. They don't see what Eärendil sees to them. Their captain stands frozen at the helm, his jaw clenched, his eyes distant. But when he finally speaks, his voice doesn't tremble. You say no ship returns, he tells the ghosts. You say the Valor don't listen, but you're wrong about one thing. He lifts the Silmaril, and this time, its light doesn't push the shadows back. It wraps around them, gentle as a shroud. I'm not sailing to be remembered. I'm sailing so my son won't have to. The ghosts don't vanish. They step back. One by one, they retreat to the edges of the ship, their whispers fading until only the wind remains. The last to go is the woman with the salt-cracked voice. She touches Eärendil's shoulder, a feather's weight, there and gone, before melting into the air like mist at dawn. The crew exhales as one. No one asks what just happened. No one needs to. The way Eärendil looks at the Silmaril now, not as a tool, but as a promise, tells them all they need to know. Vingilot sails on, the stars wheeling overhead, but the air feels different, lighter, as if the ship isn't just cutting through water and a moor, but through the weight of centuries. The whispers may linger in the timbers, in the ropes, in the silent spaces between heartbeats, but they no longer say turn back. They say go on. The horizon doesn't so much brighten as unfold, the sky peeling back like layers of gilded parchment to reveal colors no mortal eye has ever named: gold that hums, silver that sings, a light so alive it seems to breathe. The air carries the scent of blossoms never crushed underfoot, of fruit never plucked, sweetness so potent it aches. Valinor, the word lodges in Eärendil's throat, half prayer, half warning. The crew falls still, their hands slack on the ropes, their faces caught between wonder and terror. Even the sea here holds its breath, the waves lapping at Vingilot's hull with a reverence usually reserved for holy ground. But Erendil doesn't kneel, doesn't weep. His fingers tighten around the Silmaril until its light pulses against his palm like a second heartbeat. It should comfort him. Instead, it burns. This jewel was never his to carry. It was wrenched from Morgoth's crown in blood and fire, its legacy woven through betrayal, oath-breaking, kinslaying. What right does he, a man of fleeting years, a wanderer with salt in his veins, and no home left to return to, have to lay it at the feet of the Valor. The thought coils around his ribs like a vice. You are no hero. You are a thief, dragging stolen light into the undying west. A hand touches his shoulder. He turns to find the oldest of the elven crew, her eyes deep as tide-carved pools. She doesn't speak, doesn't need to. Her gaze flicks to the Silmaril, then back to him, and in that look is a truth he'd forgotten. The light isn't just a thing. It's a choice. Every hand that's held it, Lothian, Baron, Elwing, has been flawed, has faltered. Yet the light endured, not because they were worthy, but because they carried it forward. The shore draws nearer, white sands gleaming like crushed pearls. Shapes move there, tall, radiant, their presence bending the very air around them, the Valor. Eärendil's breath catches. He expected anger, judgment, but the air thrums with something else entirely, anticipation, as if they've been waiting, as if his coming was written into the music of the world, long before his first cry echoed through Gondolin's halls. Behind him, the crew forms a silent line, their shoulders squared, not as followers, as witnesses. One of the men, the same storm-eyed sailor who scoffed at shadows weeks ago, steps forward, his calloused hand resting briefly on the hilt of his sword. Not to draw it, to remind Erendil, they didn't sail this far to turn back now, not when Middle-earth's fate hangs by a thread. The ship's prow kisses the sand. The silence is absolute. No gulls cry, no wind stirs. Even the Silmaril's light dims, as if holding its breath. Eärendil closes his eyes. For a heartbeat, he's back on the shores of Sirion, Elwing's voice soft in his ear. You don't need permission to save them. You just need to ask. When his boot meets the soil of Valinor, the ground doesn't shake. The heavens don't part. But somewhere, deep in the roots of the world, a chord rings out. Clear, resonant, the first note of a song that's been waiting centuries to be sung. The shore stretches before them like a dream half remembered, white sand, glowing beneath a sky, too vast for mortal eyes to hold. Then the air shimmers, not with heat, but with presence. Figures taller than the masts of Vingilot step forward, their forms shifting between light and shadow, their eyes like twin suns, burning through the fog of ages. The Maiar, guardians of the undying lands, their voices when they speak are not one but many, the crash of waves, the groan of ancient trees, the crackle of stars being born. By what right do you tread these shores, son of fleeting realms? The words land like stones, each syllable heavy enough to crush bone. Eärendil does not flinch. He kneels, yes, kneels so deeply the sand presses into his skin. But his back stays straight, his hands steady as they cradle the Silmaril. By no right, he admits, and the honesty in his voice surprises even him. Only by need, the jewel pulses in his grip, its light weaving through his fingers like liquid defiance. He speaks then, not in the polished phrases of lore keepers or the honeyed pleas of diplomats, but in the raw, salt-scraped tongue of a man who has seen his world crumble. He tells them of Morgoth's shadow, stretching across Middle-earth like a stain, of cities reduced to ash and song, reduced to silence. He speaks of men who die too young to remember their grandfathers' names, of elves who fade like mist under a relentless sun. His voice breaks only once, when he speaks of Elwing, her hands empty of all but hope, her gaze fixed on a horizon he might never cross again. The Maiar do not stir. Their faces, if they have faces, reveal nothing. One lifts a hand, and the air between them warps like molten glass. The children of Iluvatar were granted their own paths. Comes the reply, colder than the deepest trench of the sea. Their sorrows are of their own making. What is this to the Valor? For a heartbeat, Erendil falters. The doubt he buried months ago surges back. The fear that this was always folly, that no plea from mortal shores could sway the powers. Then the Silmaril flares, its light slicing through the gathering dark like a blade through silk. Not in anger, in reminder. The glow catches the edge of Amaya's robe, and something flickers there, not pity, not mercy, but recognition. This light was born in the west, before the world was young. It remembers. The guardians turn away, their forms blending into a radiance too bright to behold. Their voices weave together in a debate that shakes the very air, words like thunder, whispers like falling water. Vingilot's crew sinks to their knees, hands pressed to ears, but Eärendil remains upright, his eyes fixed on the Silmaril. The weight is agony. The silence between each echoing word stretches longer than the miles he sailed. Then at last the light shifts. The tallest of the Maiar steps forward, and this time their voice is singular, clear as a bell tolling across still water. The jewel you bear is both burden and beacon, they say. It has passed through hands stained and clean, through ages of glory and ruin, yet here it stands unbroken. As do you, the sand beneath Eärendil's knees hums, as if the land itself is weighing his worth. The Valor will hear you. No fanfare follows the words. No gates swing open, but the air changes, the pressure lifting like a hand withdrawn from a drowning man's chest. Behind him, the crew exhales in a ragged chorus, their breath misting in the sudden chill. Eärendil does not rise, not yet. He presses his forehead to the sand, the Silmaril's light pooling around him like a second dawn, and whispers his thanks, not to the powers, but to the light itself, and to the hands that trusted him to carry it home. The hall of the Valor stretches beyond sight, its arches lost in a sky woven from starlight and song. The air hums with power, thick enough to taste honey and lightning, the scent of storms yet unborn. Eärendil stands alone at its heart, the Silmaril's glow pooling around his feet like liquid dawn. Before him, the Valor are not merely figures, they are forces. Man, whose gaze pins him where he stands, eyes brighter than the noonday sun, seeing not just flesh but the shape of his choices, the weight of every wave that carried him here. Eärendil does not grovel, does not beg. He squares his shoulders and speaks not with the polished tongue of envoys, but with the salt-cracked voice of a sailor who has charted the edge of despair. You know what shadows crawl across Middle-earth, he says, and the words are quieter than he intends, yet they ripple through the hall like a struck bell. But do you know the sound of a child's breath, catching when the torches gutter? The way a mother's hands shake as she tucks her young ones into beds they fear they'll never wake from. The Silmaril pulses in his grip, its light flaring as if in agreement. I did not come to plead for myself. I came because they have no one left to speak for them. The Valor do not stir. Barda's face is a constellation of unreadable stars, almost beard the froth of a restless sea. But man, what leans forward, his mantle of winds rustling with the sound of 1,000 distant shores. And what would you have us do, son of two kindreds? Tear the mountains down, drown the dark in light. His voice is neither cruel nor kind. It simply is, vast as the sky he commands. Erendil's throat tightens. This is the moment, the edge of the knife. He could ask for armies, for wrath like the world has never seen. Instead, he opens his empty hand, the one not holding the Silmaril, and lets it fall to his side. I would have you remember them. The words hang in the air, fragile as spider silk. Remember that Middle-earth is not just a name on a map. It's the place where your music first took shape. Where laughter still rises, however faint, against the dark. A murmur runs through the Valor then, low as distant thunder. Some faces harden, others soften like stone under a gentle rain. The debate that follows is not in words Eärendil can comprehend. It's in the shudder of the ground beneath his knees, the way the stars beyond the hall's arches flicker and realign. Time bends, stretches, breaks, then silence. Man, where rises, and the very air stills in reverence. The shadow has grown beyond the measure of its bounds. He intones, and the pronouncement lands like a mountain, settling into place. We will act. Relief floods Eärendil's chest, so sharp it aches. But man, what is not finished? His next words are quieter, weighted with something like sorrow. Yet no mortal foot may tread these shores unchanged. To bear the light of the West into the world's dark places, you must become part of both, and neither. The meaning dawns slowly, colder than the deepest sea. Eärendil looks down at his hands calloused, salt-stained, human hands, and understands the price is not death. It's transformation, to sail beyond the circles of the world, yet never truly walk among men or elves again. The Silmaril's light flares once more, not in triumph, but in kinship. It too is a thing out of place, a jewel of the West, carried through fire and blood into mortal lands. Somewhere beyond the hall, a gull cries. Eärendil closes his eyes and hears, beneath the sound, the whisper of waves against distant shores. The shores of home, where Elwing waits with their son's small hand clutched in hers. When he opens them again, his voice does not shake. If that is the cost, I pay it gladly. The Valor do not smile, but the light around them shifts, gentler now, like dawn after a long night. Manwë lifts his hand, and the wind that rushes through the hall carries the scent of rain on parched earth, the first breath of a storm that will change the world. The air in the hall thickens, pressing against Eärendil's skin like the weight of centuries. Man, was words hang between them not a sentence, but a fork in the road, each path stretching into a future he can barely fathom. Remain in Valinor, immortal as the Eldar, never again to walk the shores where Elwing waits, or return to Middle-earth, mortal and fleeting, his quest complete, but his family's fate left to the mercy of the dark. The Silmaril warms in his grip, its light flickering as if sensing his turmoil. It doesn't speak, not in words, but in the way its glow spills over his fingers, like a question. What is light for, if not to be seen? A memory surfaces, sharp as a knife's edge. Elwing on the cliffs of Sirion, her face turned toward the sea, their son's small hands tangled in her hair as he babbled about the stars. She hadn't begged him to stay, hadn't whispered promises or threats. She'd simply pressed the Silmaril into his palms and said, "Show them what we're fighting for." Not victory, not vengeance, proof that even in the deepest night, a spark could endure. The Valor watch him, their gazes like moonlight on still water, patient, pitiless. Eärendil closes his eyes. When he opens them, his voice doesn't shake. I will not linger here while Middle-earth fades, nor will I return to watch my son grow old and pass beyond my reach. The admission hangs in the air, raw as an open wound, but if there is a way, any way to be both shield and signal, let me pay that price. For the first time, Varda stirs. Her presence isn't a movement, but a shift in the fabric of the world, stars flaring to life in her wake. You would become a star, she murmurs, and the words aren't a question. They are weighing, as if she's measuring the metal of his soul against the cold expanse of the cosmos. Not just a light in the dark, but a promise. A reminder that the Valor have not turned wholly away. Eärendil's breath catches, a star, not a king, not a hero, but a fixed point in the heavens, seen by all, touched by none. No more warm hands clasping his, no more whispers in the dark with Elwing, no more watching his son's first steps, first words, first wounds. The cost is a blade to the ribs. But then he thinks of the men in their crumbling villages, the elves in their fading halls, lifting their faces to the sky as they have done for generations, searching for hope in the indifferent dark. Someone must answer. He lifts the Silmaril, its light arcing toward Varda like a bridge. Yes, the change begins in his bones, not pain, but pressure, as if his very flesh is being remade by the hands of the wind itself. The Silmaril's glow seeps into his skin, his blood, his breath, until he can't tell where the jewel ends and he begins. The crew of Vingilot cries out not in fear, but in awe, as his form blurs at the edges, dissolving into something brighter, purer. The deck beneath his feet feels distant now, the air thinner, as if he's already halfway to the heavens. Manwë raises his hand, and a gust sweeps through the hall, carrying the scent of rain and salt, and something older than both. Then sail, he commands, and the word is less an order than a blessing. Not as Erendil of the sea, but as Erendil of the sky. Let your light be their north star, their dawn in the depths of despair. Vingilot shudders, its timbers groaning as the ship itself is transformed. Silver hull melting into starlight, sails stretching into vast, shimmering wings. The crew stumbles back, their faces alight with reflected radiance, but their eyes are clear. They understand. This isn't an end, it's a translation. As the last of his mortal self unravels, Eärendil casts one final thought toward the eastern shores, where a woman with sea-gray eyes might be gazing at the twilight, her fingers curled around a child's shoulder. Look up, he pours into the silence between worlds. I'll be there. Then the wind takes him, and the sky opens its arms. The earth trembles under the march of armies unseen in Middle-earth since the dawn of days. The Valor do not merely send soldiers, they unleash the very fabric of their power. Mayar clad in armor, forged from fallen stars, lead legions of Eldar, their voices raised in a chorus that makes the mountains shudder. Morgoth's forces, vast as they are, reel before this tide of wrath. Towers of iron crumble like sandcastles beneath the wave. Rivers of fire are quenched by winds that smell of distant, untouchable seas. But this is no clean victory. The land itself bleeds, plains split open, swallowing entire battalions. Forests burn not with ordinary flame, but with a light that leaves only glass and memory in its wake. High above the carnage, Vingilot glides through the heavens, no longer bound by the pull of tides or wind. Eärendil's form is neither flesh nor spirit now, but something in between, a being of radiance and resolve. The Silmaril at his brow pulses with each heartbeat of the war below, its light waxing and waning like a breath. He cannot raise a sword, cannot shout orders or bind wounds. Yet his presence changes everything. On the darkest nights, when Morgoth's dragons blacken the sky with their wings, the free peoples lift their eyes and see him, a steadfast gleam piercing the smoke. Elves faltering in battle find their hands steadying. Men who have never held a weapon before grip spears with sudden certainty. Even the dwarves, pragmatic and proud, pause in their tunnel forts to murmur prayers to the strange new star that burns where no star should be. The war drags on, not for months, but for years that stretch like wounds refusing to heal. Morgoth's desperation breeds horrors unimaginable, werewolves with hides impervious to steel. Winged beasts hatched in pits of liquid shadow, yet for every abomination he unleashes, the Valar answer with older, purer magics. The Maiar sing valleys into existence to trap his armies. Eagles large enough to blot out the sun tear through his flying terrors. And always, always, there's the light above, unchanging, unwavering, a reminder that the dark is not the only power in this world. Erendil feels every death like a pinprick of cold in his celestial flesh. He cannot intervene, not directly, but he bears witness, sees the young elf prince, rallying his scattered kin with a banner made from his own cloak. Watches the mortal woman who stands alone on a broken bridge, buying time for her village to flee with nothing but a fishing spear and a scream that would shame a demon. These are the moments that fuel his light, not the Valar's might, not the Silmaril's ancient fire, but the stubborn, stupid, gorgeous courage of those who fight not because they believe they'll win, but because surrender is a song they refuse to learn. When the final blow comes, it's not from a blade or a spell. Morgoth, the black foe, the master of lies, is undone by the very chains he once used to bind his enemies. The Valar drag him thrashing into the void, his screams so loud they shatter the peaks of Thangorodrim. His armies scatter like ash in a gale. The war is over. Dawn breaks over a broken world. The survivors limp from hiding places, their faces gaunt, their hands trembling not with fear now, but with something fragile and nameless. Hope, perhaps, or the first faint stirrings of peace. They look up, as they've done every night for years, and there he is, Eärendil's light, softer now, gentler, like an ember coaxed back to life. He will never walk among them again, never feel a hand clasp his ingratitude or grief. But as the years turn to ages, his star becomes more than a beacon. It becomes a story, a lullaby, a promise whispered to children who have never known war. No darkness lasts forever, not while someone remembers to light a candle. And somewhere, on a quiet shore where the waves still murmur his name, a woman with sea-gray eyes smiles up at the twilight, her fingers laced with those of a boy who has his father's stubborn chin. She doesn't weep. She doesn't need to. The sky remembers for her. The shores of Middle-earth have never felt so empty. Elwing stands alone where the waves lick the sand, her fingers curled around the last trace of warmth she has left, the memory of Eärendil's hand in hers, the weight of their son against her hip. The Silmaril hangs at her throat, its light muted now, as if even the jewel knows what's coming. She doesn't need scouts to tell her the enemy approaches. She can taste it in the wind, smoke, and iron, the reek of torches burning through villages that will never rise again. When the first horns sound, they don't startle her. She's been waiting for this. The men who come are not the faceless hordes of Morgoth's legions, but her own kin, or what's left of them. Elves with eyes hollowed by greed, their armor dented from battles fought over jewels rather than kingdoms. They don't ask, they don't bargain. Their leader, a lord who once feasted in her father's halls, extends a hand slick with seawater and blood. The Silmaril belongs to our house, he says, as if reciting a line from a play no one wants to watch anymore. Elwing doesn't argue, doesn't plead. She steps backward, her bare heels meeting the cliff's edge, the sea roaring below like a living thing. The Silmaril flares against her skin, its light slicing through the dusk. For a heartbeat, she lets them see it, really see it not as a prize to be stolen, but as a heart ripped, still beating from the chest of the world. Then she does the one thing they never expect. She smiles. And leaps. The fall is longer than she imagined. Long enough to hear the gasps of her pursuers. Long enough to feel the wind pluck at her hair like a child's fingers. The sea rises to meet her, not as a killer, but as a collaborator. Just before the waves claim her, the Silmaril's light explodes outward, wrapping her in a cocoon of radiance. The water doesn't swallow her, it transforms her, bones hollow into delicate struts, skin stretches into feathers white as sea foam. Her scream becomes a cry that splits the sky, not a lament, but a declaration. Olmo's gift isn't just wings, it's a roadmap written in currents and star shine, a path only a creature of air and longing could follow. She flies not as a bird flees danger, but as a homing arrow finds its mark. Nights blur into days, storms into stillness, until the horizon bleeds not into sea, but into something vaster, the curve of the world itself. And there, suspended between heaven and earth, she sees him. Vingilot is no longer a ship of wood and sail, but a constellation given form, its prow cutting through clouds like a blade through silk. At its helm, Eärendil is both man and myth, his body woven from starlight and stubbornness. When their eyes meet, the sky holds its breath. He reaches for her, his fingers trailing comet dust, and for the first time since the cliff, Elwing falters. She cannot perch on his shoulder like a pet, cannot nest in the rigging. They are together, yes, but the price is written in the space between her feathers and his celestial skin. Yet love, even fractured, finds a way. She circles him once, twice, her wings brushing the edges of his light, and something in the Silmaril's glow pulses in answer. They need no words. The sea and the sky have always known each other, after all, and so they sail on, not as husband and wife, but as twin flames in the eternal dark, a beacon for those below who still dare to look up and hope. Their son will grow up hearing the stories, how his mother became the wind itself, how his father carved his name into the heavens. He'll trace their shapes in the stars and wonder if they can see him too. But in the quiet moments, when the world is still and the tides whisper secrets, he'll feel them, not as legends, not as myths, as the two who loved him enough to become the light he'd need long after they were gone. The ground splits like rotten fruit under the weight of Morgoth's tread, his armored form towering over the battlefield, a mountain given malice. His crown, once studded with stolen jewels, now drips molten slag, each drop searing the earth where it falls. The Valor do not come as diplomats or judges, this time they come as ruin. Tolka's the wrestler's laughter shakes the sky as he grapples the Dark Lord, their struggle carving new valleys into the land. man, whose winds scream like 1,000 dying birds, stripping the flesh from Morgoth's winged abominations mid-flight. And through it all, Eärendil's light cuts like a blade, not just from above, but within the fray, Vingilot's prow, slicing through smoke and spellwork alike. The Silmaril's radiance, burning away the shadows that cling to Morgoth like a second skin. The Dark Lord roars, not in pain but in outrage. This was never meant to be. His dominion was to be eternal, his throne unshakable. Yet here, in the filth and the fire, he feels it, the first true fear. Not of death, but of being forgotten. His armies crumble, not just from blade and bolt, but from the sheer weight of the Valar's presence, their very essence unraveling his lies. A dragon, last of its kind, writhes beneath Eärendil's spear, its final breath a gout of flame that ignites the very air, and in that conflagration, Morgoth sees the truth. He is not a god, he is a thief, a vandal, a scream echoing in a hollow hall. The earth itself rebels, mountains vomit rivers of fire, seas rear up like wounded beasts, swallowing coasts whole. Morgoth's strongholds implode, their foundations gnawed away by the gnashing teeth of almost tides. The price of his defeat is written in the land. Entire realms dragged beneath the waves, forests reduced to glass, the once great plain of Anfaglith cracked like dried clay. Elves and men alike flee, not from the enemy now, but from the world's agony, and then silence, not the hush of peace, but the terrible stillness of a storm's eye. Morgoth stumbles, his iron skin split, his essence leaking into the dirt like poisoned ink. The Valar do not gloat, they do not pause. With hands that have shaped continents, they seize him. His screams are not recorded in any song, for no tongue could bear the sound. Chains forged in the heart of the cosmos snap around his limbs, their links etched with names older than time. The same chains he once used to bind his foes now drag him into the void. His crown, a molten mockery, his legacy already crumbling to ash in the wind. Dawn comes slowly, as if the sky itself is afraid to hope. The first light spills over a broken world, not gold, not red, but a pale, tentative blue. Eärendil's star dims, not in defeat, but in deference. His work is done. Below, survivors crawl from the wreckage, their hands shaking as they touch the unfamiliar sun. They do not cheer, they weep for the dead. For the land, for the simple, staggering fact that they are here when so many are not. But in the east, where the new sun climbs, a shoot of green forces its way through cracked stone. Then another, and another. Life, it seems, is as stubborn as light. The war is over, the darkness is broken, and for the first time in an age, the wind carries no whispers of war, only the scent of rain, and the distant, dreaming song of the sea. The night sky never forgets. Long after Morgoth's chains have cooled in the void, long after the last scars of war fade from the land, Eärendil's light lingers steady, unchanging, a pinprick of defiance against the vast dark. To the elves, he is more than a star. He is a covenant. They point him out to their children, tracing his path with fingers that remember the touch of his hand. See, they whisper, that is the mariner's light. He watches over us still. His name finds its way into their songs, not as a dirge but as a refrain of hope, woven through laments and love ballads alike. Even in the undying lands, where the trees glow with their own radiance, the Eldar pause when Vingilot crests the horizon, their voices softening as if in the presence of something holy. Men tell different tales. In smoky taverns and around campfires, they speak of a man who dared to sail where no mortal should, a man who traded his home for the sake of theirs. The details blur with each retelling. Some say he wrestled sea monsters. Others claim he bargained with the gods, but the heart of the story remains a beacon in the sky, proof that even the smallest light can outlast the longest night. Farmers planting their fields glance upward, finding comfort in his constancy. Lost travelers, stumbling through trackless forests, use his gleam to steer by. He becomes less a person and more a promise that no one is ever truly forsaken. The Valor, too, mark his passing, not with tears, for their sorrow is too vast for such simple things, but with a quiet acknowledgement. In the great tapestries of Era, where all histories are woven, Eärendil's thread burns brighter than most, a golden strand amid the gloom. Man, whose eagles bring word of him to the far corners of Arda, not as a lord or a servant, but as a sign. The powers have not abandoned the world. They have simply changed how they answer. And then there are the children. Elrond, with his father's sea-gray eyes and his mother's quiet strength, becomes a keeper of memory, his house a refuge for all who seek wisdom. He speaks little of the star that shares his blood, but on clear nights, those who know him well see the way his gaze lingers on the western horizon. Elros, though, chooses a different path, mortal, fleeting, his days numbered like the petals of a spring flower, yet in his veins runs the same fire that once lit the Silmaril. He builds kingdoms instead of ships, his hands shaping the world in ways his father never could. Brothers divided by fate, bound by legacy, each carrying a fragment of Eärendil's light into the ages to come. Generations turn, empires rise and fall, but the mariner's star never wavers. When the shadow stirs again in later days, when new terrors creep from the east, it is his light that the free peoples recall first. Not as a weapon, not as a miracle, but as a reminder, etched in the heavens, that some choices echo longer than any war. The sea may forget the names of the ships it has claimed. The earth may swallow the towers of the proud, but the sky remembers, and so, in the end, do we. The sea remembers his name, even when the land forgets. Erendil's ship no longer cuts through water, but through the fabric of the night itself, its silver wake scattering stardust across the heavens. Below, on the restless waves, sailors lift their eyes to that unwavering light, not just for navigation, but for something deeper, older. A reminder that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the choice to sail onward despite it. On still evenings, when the wind drops to a whisper and the stars press close, those who listen carefully might catch it. The faintest echo of a bell, clear and bright as a drop of water struck against crystal. Some say it's the sound of Vingilot's prow, parting the clouds. Others swear it's laughter, woven through with notes of sorrow and joy in equal measure. And then there are the feathers, white as moonlit foam. They drift down on rare mornings, catching the dawn light like scattered pieces of the sun. Children racing along the shore gather them with reverent hands, pressing them between pages of worn books, or tying them into charms for luck. The elders nod knowingly. Elwing's wings, they murmur. She rides the thermals beside her husband's ship, her form flickering between gull and woman, between memory and myth. Their love story isn't written in letters or stone, but in the way the horizon blurs where sea meets sky, in the way the wind carries whispers of a song no living voice recalls. Generations pass, kingdoms crumble, new stars are born and die in the endless expanse above. But Eärendil's light never wavers when the shadow creeps back in later ages, when orcs scuttle from their mountain holes and men forget the taste of peace. It's his star the heroes seek first. Not because it grants them strength or wisdom, but because it asks no questions, makes no demands. It simply is, a fixed point in the chaos, proof that even the blackest night is temporary. On the eve of great battles, sentries standing watch sometimes see a strange shimmer along the western horizon, a ripple in the air like heat off summer sands. Those who have lost much, who carry grief like a second shadow, describe it differently. Not a trick of the light, but a presence. Two figures, hand and wing, gazing down not as judges or saviors, but as witnesses. As if to say, we see you, we remember, and in that moment, the weary find their spines straightening, the wounded tighten their grips on their swords. Because the oldest stories aren't just tales, they're compasses, and so the mariner sails on, his ship a needle, stitching the torn edges of the world back together. The Silmaril at his brow burns no less fiercely for the ages, its light undimmed by time or tide. Below, in the quiet places where hope is a fragile thing, mothers point to the evening sky and tell their children the truth. Darkness has no power over those who keep a little light in their pockets. The tale of Erendil the Mariner isn't just a story. It's a whisper carried across centuries, a spark that refuses to be extinguished. Think of the last time you stood under an open sky, the stars stretched endlessly above you. That glimmer you saw, it might have been his light, still traveling, still reminding us that bravery isn't about the absence of fear, but the choice to keep sailing even when the horizon disappears. His sacrifice wasn't just for the elves or the men of his age. It was for every soul who'd ever glance upward and feel the weight of their own shadows. That's the magic of this tale. It doesn't belong to parchment or song. It lives in the way a child points to the brightest star and asks, "What's that one called?" And what of Elwing? Her love wasn't a footnote. It was the quiet, relentless tide that shaped the shore. Her leap from the cliffs didn't end in tragedy. It became a metamorphosis. Wings against the wind, light against the dark. She teaches us that love isn't always about holding on. Sometimes, it's about letting go in a way that transforms the very air around us. Together, they're more than legend. They're a dialogue between sea and sky, a reminder that even when parted, devotion finds a way to bridge the impossible. The beauty of this story lies in its refusal to fade. Long after the battles ended and the ages turned, their light persists, not as a distant relic, but as a living promise. When the night feels heaviest, when the world's shadows press too close, that's when Eärendil's star burns brightest. It doesn't shout, it doesn't demand. It simply is, steady as a heartbeat, asking nothing of us except to look up and remember. Darkness is never the end of the story, so as the tale drifts into silence, don't think of it as an ending. Think of it as a horizon line, a place where the story doesn't stop, but simply shifts from sight to memory. The ship may vanish into the distance, but the wake it leaves behind, that ripples onward, touching shores we've yet to walk. And somewhere, in the quiet between twilight and dawn, a gull's cry mingles with the wind, carrying the same question it's carried for ages. What will you do with the light you've been given?
you.